That's how they get you. It feels familiar. Many organizations see data protection as a tick box exercise. That is what cyber attacks count on, our trust. They're not counting on your ignorance. They're counting on, oh, this does look plausible. Often data specifically is quite underestimated. We're here really to support the real people behind the data, and that really is the business. It's interesting to see how it's become as simply, you trade gold and trading data. When you put in that perspective, it's not just something we can glance over.
Welcome to the Lunch at Work podcast, where we talk to experts about how to make workplaces better. Siobhan, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Lunch at Work podcast. I am extremely excited to have this conversation with you because when we spoke a while back, I kind of started speaking to you about data protection. And it's one of those things where you either really care about data protection or it's kind of just something that you gloss over and accept some cookies on a website every now and again. After having a conversation with you, I was really enlightened as to what actually goes on and kind of the deeper understanding of it. Really, really excited. Get that information and that knowledge out there to everyone who's listening. Before we dive into that, could we just have a little bit of an explanation as to who you are and what you do?
I'm Siobhan Coetzer. I am Senior Legal Counsel for the WSH Group. I lead on all things privacy, AI and tech, which is really exciting across our group in the UK and Europe, which is currently 16 operating companies and in 7 jurisdictions. So lots happening in the space from a data point of view in each different country. AI is getting entwined into that. Really exciting times. So part of my role is really to oversee strategy, governance, and support the real people behind data, being you guys, our employees, our clients and suppliers.
So you said 7 jurisdictions and 16 companies.
At the moment, we are assisting and supporting all of that across.
It sounds like a lot.
It is a lot in the sense of how different countries have approached data from different angles. So it's really interesting to see. And I think that's what is most important and can be quite interesting.
Data protection is not necessarily something, you don't necessarily grow up thinking, oh, you know what I want to be when I'm older? I want to go into data protection and I want to analyze the life out of that. When was kind of the first time that you thought about data protection as something that you can do in your job, firstly, and secondly, when you thought that it actually mattered and that you could make a difference?
It's a really interesting question because I think often data specifically is quite underestimated in industries. As you say, it kind of gets glossed over. In a way, it gets a bad rep because it can be quite dry. It's not the most exciting in the fore of an industry. Once we dive into it, you actually see there's quite a lot behind the reasons why we need to. I moved in-house, which means moving into a company and assisting everything in about 9 years ago. And it really became apparent then why it's so important. Processes and policies are in place for a reason. I suppose if you think about personal data, think of our employer, how much data they have on us. They have our name, our beneficiaries, our NI numbers, addresses, next of kin, exactly. So there's all types of data that can make up a person. When looking at that, that's a lot of information about one person. If you simply just kind of bring it back to yourself each time, what are the risks with that if it falls into the wrong hands? That is not a far-fetched idea. There's hackers out there, and that's why we have flurry of ransom attacks and things happening every single day in every organization. No one is immune to that. Thinking of all that data about one person falling into the wrong hands, in a malicious wrong hands, a lot of damage can be done. Identity theft is a big issue and has happened. Data actually has become quite a massive commodity in the market to be able to sell and leverage. And leverage is ransom attacks, as we see with people demanding money for that. So yeah, it makes it really interesting to see how that play is happening with all the data and why that matters. So that's what kind of led me to be, there's a lot more than just a policy and a tick box and let's move on. Industries feel like it's a very legal problem, an information security problem, an IT issue that has to be dealt with strictly within only those teams. At the beginning, when we started, I said, we're here really to support the real people behind the data, and that really is the business. It's not only a one-team thing, it's an everybody responsibility thing, and that's why it matters in that way. The other interesting thing for me, from like a personal perspective, was actually how political data protection legislation is. And now with also upcoming laws of AI, as we've seen new governments come into power across the US, the UK, other players in the market across the world, it's really interesting to see how they're starting to either change laws, scrap ones that were in previous governments. So it's just changing their playing field all the time, really, really keeping us on our toes, what to do next as a company, how to keep compliance, but equally ensuring it becomes a good culture for us. So in that sense, I'm kind of like, is data protection actually that dry? Probably not, because there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, and that's where we are to support and protect the company ultimately.
With the rise of AI, everything is happening so fast, and you can't afford to sit on the back foot, and you can't afford to wait for things to happen before you make changes, which is wildly interesting to me. Can you just clarify in terms of identity theft?
Yeah.
But what are the sorts of things that can happen if somebody gets a hold of your information?
They can sell that to other third parties. They can have a whole list of people, and simply things from opening bank accounts in your name. I've had actually someone I know that's happened to. A bank account was opened and they fraudulently put money through there. They can even go down as far as money laundering through those accounts, and that could be detrimental to you because then you will be being seen as unlawful in terms of criminal activities. It can get that far. That feels quite far away, kind of a far-fetched prospect, but it has happened, especially knowing someone so close that has happened. Identity theft is rife. Data alone is really, really malleable. You can use it in different ways. As technology gets more sophisticated, the way that you use apps, the way you interact with people, it's not only identity theft, but that's one of the bigger things that can happen when it gets into the wrong hands. And not only that, from a reputational damage is also a big thing to be aware of. Data is interesting to see how it's become a really asset, like in the market, as simply, you trade gold and things like that, trading data. When you put in that perspective, it's not just something we can glance over in organizations and in our personal lives. It touches us at the core. It really is us. And I think often people think, oh, personal data is something else, but it is ours.
It's interesting, data being a commodity, because social media, everyone's on their social media, but they're no longer entertainment businesses. They're data businesses now, aren't they?
That's true. Yeah. And that's actually a really good way of looking at it.
Do you have like a top 3 tips on protecting your personal data and things that you can do to ensure that, as far as humanly possible from your side, you can protect your data?
And don't overlook the things of making sure you have strong passwords within your personal phones. Your laptop's password managers in your phone is always helpful. If you do have important information in your home, like you have a file with, I suppose, wills and things like that, making sure that's in a safe space and potentially locked away, potentially either if you have a safe or in a cupboard that has a lock, in case there is ever break-in or intrusion in your home. That hopefully will never happen, but could. And also just making sure no one, I suppose from a perspective, is making no one that needs to see that, even if it's family and friends. Not everyone needs to see those personal information. So there is things in place to do that. You wouldn't hand your keys to anyone, same as data. Why are you going to hand your data over to anyone?
I was going to say also just maybe to have a plan in place if your phone does get taken out of your hands, or if your purse does go missing, or whatever the case is, have a little plan in place that you know what to do when that happens, so that you're not scrounging around trying to figure out how to freeze your card.
Absolutely, especially in the workplace. We rely heavily on our internal systems. We are quite familiar with people when we email them. We think we know who's on the other side of that email, or just interacting on Teams specifically. That is what cyber attacks count on, is our trust within the organization of being familiar with things. They're not counting on your ignorance of being like, oh, whoops, I clicked on something by mistake. They're counting on, oh, this does look plausible, I should click on it. It's something that is important that's come through from a manager perhaps or a colleague, and it's just simply thinking, oh, it's fine, one click, I can send this to my colleague. And that's actually where the risk begins, because we become too relaxed. It's not to say we need to be paranoid, but being cautious is what keeps our businesses and organizations professional and keeping that trust of all our employees. Every single team, we come across data on the regular. Every single person sends an email every day. Being too trusting can be difficult in that sense of we need to be cautious. There's a balance to be struck. It's about keeping the trust in our roles.
I love receiving those little security emails that are testing you.
And
click on this link.
I think we had one released last week or 2 weeks ago. They are really sophisticated, and for good reason. Thankfully, we do have systems in place internally from our IT and information security support to release those, to make us aware, because it is very easy to click on something without thinking.
Things are happening so fast these days, and people need things quicker, and so you just think, yes, okay, click the link, let's get that off to the next person, fire it out. But taking that time just to digest the information and make sure that what you're reading is correct, and that you're not clicking on links and opening folders and files and
Absolutely.
all the fun stuff. You said that cyber attacks are reliant on people's trust. Businesses have so much security training happening. Why are people still clicking on dodgy links and opening up dodgy files or whatever it is that come through to their emails?
It's interesting. I think simply put, we are human. We are under pressure. We are distracted. We're busy. There's so much happening on a day-to-day that it is so sophisticated that we don't think twice. It's interesting to see, particularly in the UK regulator, data protection regulator space, the ICO, they release their statistics every year of breaches that have happened. And the top 2 that have stayed in the top 2 consistently over the years is sending emails or documents to the wrong person, as well as clicking on links, phishing attempts, and or text messages as well on work mobiles. That's constantly the first 2. As they get more sophisticated, as I was saying, it becomes more and more easier because you think, oh, I know what to spot, and that looks dodgy, but that could be the one that actually is the phishing email.
If somebody receives a phishing email, what's the best thing to do?
Particularly within our organization, we do have the report suspicious button at the top of every email. So as soon as you are unsure, rather be safe than sorry. Rather click it and it wasn't suspicious or it wasn't a phishing email than it was. I've done that a couple of times where I'm like, I don't know where this came from. InfoSec will look into it and release it for us. So this is all around more back-end security systems, but it's also the training and awareness of an organization of what to do. So it's not always about the IT systems. It's more about what we do as employees every single day, making sure that we verifying them straight away as well. And that actually sometimes it's just locking your screen, because even in our offices, if someone has managed to get in and your laptop's open, they may see some information. They're building now a profile around you. They know who you are, what you do in your personal life, what's your role. And that's how they get you, because it feels familiar. It feels very, oh, they do know me. Always just reporting it. Rather be safe than sorry. Culture is what turns processes and policies into daily habits. Once we take away the need to be like, oh, the policy, it's actually, no, it's my day-to-day habits. It's me locking my screen. It's me making sure I'm sending it to the right person and double checking. It's me making sure access to folders and hard drives and different things are for the right people. Data protection, like anything, it's not about perfection. It's about the progress and the ownership of that in each of our roles, which is what I think brings about the good culture. In essence, it's not just about personal data anymore, but my day-to-day role and how I interact with everyone.
Obviously, those are things that a lot of businesses are doing correctly, but what are some of the things that a lot of businesses are not doing right? Where can they improve?
Many organizations see data protection or data privacy compliance as a tick box exercise. A couple of policies here, a couple of notices, and then that it squarely sits with our legal teams, our information security teams, IT teams. And I think that's what they're getting wrong. It needs to be embedded in our day-to-day operations. Data protection is a living process. It happens every day. It's evolving. When I do training with our teams, the golden thread of data, everything from the moment, from an employee perspective, the moment you set foot in the door, the moment you leave the organization, that's the whole kind of golden thread. And then we look at all the data we do with our clients. What do we need in order to provide that catering service, that hospitality service, and then the suppliers that we need in order to deliver that. Building that, there's a lot of data around. So that's why it's getting wrong. It's not just a tick box. Things that are important or that probably require a little bit more is ownership from management, top down and bottom up. Also continuous training. I understand everyone has very, very different roles and that's not their main day-to-day. We've never ever set out to make anyone a data protection expert. It's just knowing what to spot and then bringing it to the right people. We never want anyone to make decisions on their own. Equally, we legal can help with that. Making sure we have investment to ensure we have efficient processes in place, tools in place to spot things, to have new tools to ensure data is protected in the right way. Technology is evolving, so we need the right investment for that. Also, as I said, in terms of management, we need accountability from every employee, from anyone in locations to anyone in support offices, particularly for us in terms of WSH as a group. Business is expanding into Europe, and that's very different laws. So just having those type of tick box exercises isn't going to work the more we expand, and particularly with AI, it intertwines and it changes the game.
It becomes more part of the culture, doesn't it? That it's just something that you have to continuously chat about and bring into conversation so that it's not just, oh, I've got another email, I have to do this training.
Yeah.
It's something that you need to continuously communicate about all the time, really.
The data is not a one-off task. We've quickly come to know, and especially in my experience over the years and seeing how it's evolved, it's a continuous maintenance. How are we using it? How to change if we're seeing a process that isn't right or not efficient anymore? Because also it's about efficiencies. Like any industry or any team, you need to be more efficient as we get bigger and grow and want to be more professional.
Let's say, for example, that Michaela receives an email, clicks on a link, and it's just a small mistake, brush it off. How detrimental can that one mistake be?
Quite a lot.
What can happen? Walk me through the process. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be giving any information to people about, how you could get into the system or whatever it is. But how detrimental could something like that be? Because for me, I'm just clicking on a link.
A lot can happen very, very quickly. As we've seen also just in recent ransomware attacks throughout the news, it dominates headlines quite regularly. It's not a unique thing that happens. And so one email, one small click, in a matter of seconds can bring an organization organization to a standstill. Equally, it's not only the risk of a regulatory fine from data protection regulators. That, of course, is the ultimate worry. But it's for us, and I've always said actually to our businesses when chatting to them, is the reputational damage that is the hardest to mitigate. As I've been speaking throughout this, is data equals trust. As we all know, if you take away trust, it's really hard to gain it. Gaining that back from your clients, from your employees, from your suppliers, that's how things can go wrong. Internally, it's a lot of management time. It's a lot of teams having to get involved and make sure we can mitigate it in the right way. It's not only the monetary fines, it's the reputational, it's management and resource and pulling away, because as soon as a data incident comes across my desk and gets logged in our system, that is all hands on deck and I drop everything. So no matter what's happening, that is a priority. And then from a practical or the process point of view, is because if there is a data incident or data breach we deem reportable to the ICO. So we always need to report internally to keep kind of not only a register of it, but what is it that's happening? Why is it human error? What can we do to help mitigate that? Do we have password protected documents being sent? Because if it's an empty list, it looks very suspicious. We're simply human, things happen. What do we do to kind of stop that happening on the regular? The good news is it's not all doom and gloom when things go wrong. That's why there's training in place. That's why there's awareness that's needed. The privacy culture in our day-to-day role. It's easy to think of data as an abstract concept, but if you bring it right back to you, it's always personal data. If someone handled your data in a way, how would you feel if it was dealt in the incorrect way? So how would you want your data to be used is how you should use others.
You mentioned about obviously the ransomware attacks. There's loads every day in the news all the time, big splashes on the front page, and some of them get tucked away. What is happening when there's a ransomware attack? What is the process that happens? What do businesses then do?
I suppose every organization can approach it in very different ways, but I think what's most important is if a ransomware attack happens, that can also come in different forms. It could immediately shut us out all out of our systems. None of us would be able to access our laptops. Touch wood, to date that doesn't happen, but some other phishing could be now they've been able to access our employee files to some degree, or they could have accessed reservation documents. So there's maybe limited data that they have, but they still have it. It's not only about ransomware attacks demanding a ransom. It could just be they've gotten information and now it's out of our control and given it to them. We can ask them to delete it and things, but that's what leads to them demanding money. From a back-end point of view, if it's simply we've maybe clicked on a link and information has been sent to a third party, we would have to have an incident response team straight away. That includes legal, information security, IT, and the senior board and management of that particular brand. Everyone needs to be involved and be aligned and understand what's the next steps in action. Where that first starts is when a person, once they've clicked on it, the point starts at that person's responsibility in that role. If I'm in location and I've perhaps clicked on a link, reporting it to their line manager, and then that line manager knows to come to us. In a nutshell, it's reporting, not keeping it quiet. We have legislated deadlines, the 72 hours. As soon as a breach becomes known, it's the day the breach or the minute the breach happened that the 72 hours start ticking. And that includes the public holidays and bank holidays. Once you've let us know and you've reported it internally, don't run away. We still need you. Of course, something has gone wrong, but that we need to learn from it and how we can do it better and mitigate it and shut it down quickly. Working with the businesses, gaining the trust again. Trust seems to be the biggest theme. And that's what I found really interesting coming into this is I don't think many people have maybe appreciated it is having data and holding data actually is a lot of trust to be put into an organization.
It sounds like you got a really big and scary role. I'm not sure. I'd like to swap with you.
A lot changes. When GDPR, for example, came out in 2016, everyone thinks that's when data came out. No, we had laws before that for data protection, 1998 and things like that. It's always been around in some shape and form. It's just because technology has been ramped up so quickly, we've had to get more robust with making sure, because again, full circle, it's a commodity and things evolving. Reporting, we've spoken about it before, but please ensure you report it to us. Come to legal if you're unsure of anything. Kind of build transparency between teams as well. Reporting means staying informed, and staying informed is looking at our internal resources. If you walk away today from the podcast, it's knowing, well, who is it that I need to report to if something had to happen? Potentially line manager, and then from there, do we have an incident response team? Naturally, clicking on links, please don't do that. If you think something is off, click that report suspicious button. A big one actually is a really good tip is please make sure you use the BCC field, the blind copy, because if you're intending to send to multiple recipients with documents or things that you need, BCC is a great way of doing that, because then if someone clicks reply all, it doesn't come back to everyone. That sounds like a really simple trick, but it's helped mitigate loads, because that's a very, very common thing. They CC loads of recipients and either the email they sent was in error to all these people, or when someone responds back, it's on something personal or unique on a different matter. That breach can create another breach. And just locking your laptop. When you go away, have a little cup of tea, want to go talk to a colleague, locking the laptop. Working from home has changed a lot of that. It's kind of falling out of bad habits, but making sure you just click lock as soon as you walk away from your desk. You never know who's walking around the company.
You never know who's walking around your home.
Well, this is true. Yeah, depending on your home circumstances, who knows? I'm sure the amount of pets that I've seen.
The thing is as well is that a lot of people live with roommates. I don't think that your dog is going to be trying to get some ransomware into the business, but stranger things have happened.
You never know. Data protection, it isn't just about ticking boxes. It's about protecting our people. Everyone in the industry has a role to play. And if that's working in finance, to HR, to front of house, serving our customers equally, how we handle data as a company is how we show respect and trust to each other.
Siobhan, thank you so much for all of your super interesting information today. I have learned so much about data protection, specifically about how culture is policies and procedures put into habits. I think that was a really good little thing that stuck in my brain. You know, also just on trust and the fact that you've got to be really careful about who you're trusting with incoming information. And you've also got to understand that you've put a lot of trust into your organization to take care and look after your personal data and your information. Thank you so much for joining us. And we now know exactly where to go if we ever have any data protection questions or concerns.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
This podcast is powered by BM Caterers. Contacting BM is the easiest way to start your journey to a better workplace experience. Click the link in the description for more info.